Hello again, it is me, Adam, for the Turbo Turkey Productions channel, using my dramatic voice. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. Yeah, I'm back again. I did an update yesterday and talked about things coming to this channel. We still haven't talked about Peacemaker, but yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We got a friend's play we're going to tonight, so I don't have a lot of time to talk about that right now, but I thought, hey, I got a little bit of time before that. Why not do something for the channel? With my gigantic hands coming at the camera. Also, there is the Adam and Anna channel, which we just did a couple little shorts for. Go over there and check that out too. Funny stuff. I took a nice bump into a door. I almost said a table. I went through a table. I'm a wrestling star now. No, I just bumped into a door. It was kind of funny. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about Turbo Turkey Productions and like how we came to be. I mentioned I was going to do that. So I thought I would start from the beginning. So this is story time with Adam. It's going to be a new segment where I talk about Turbo Turkey and how things grew into. How did Turkey come about? I like come up with a stupid name, Turbo Turkey. Well, it's not a stupid name, but you know, it's like, what comes up with this stupid name? Yeah, honestly, most improv groups have interesting, weird names. And there's probably an interesting story behind how they did it too. Or maybe there isn't. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, not going to ramble on this video, although I already have for about a minute and 30. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to start from how I came out here. Now, originally I was born in Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, which is, of course, the home of Notre Dame University. That's one of our big claims to fame. Usually you say, where's South Bend? Oh, that's where Notre Dame is. Oh, okay. You know, that's just kind of how it goes. But anyway, we already talked before about my distaste for Notre Dame. That's okay. That's not what this video is about. Not about them. It's about me. So anyway, after being in Indiana for 25 years of my life, I'd say, maybe a little more, I decided, after being in a long-distance relationship with Anna for 5.5 years, that I would move out to Washington. Now, I almost moved to Toronto. A little short story here real quick, but what happened was I was like, oh, I'm just going to go to Toronto and take second city classes. I mean, I could have just done that in Chicago because I was near there, but regardless, I didn't want to live in Chicago. I knew it was too big and just too wild for me. And then luckily my roommates at the time were just like, well, why don't you just go to Seattle? You know, because it's like, why are you just going to go all the way to Toronto and continue to be separated from this woman that has been with you for a long time, and you guys have put 5.5 years into it. Why don't you go like actually get to see her more than once a year or so? And she had just graduated from LSU and stuff like that, and had moved out to Seattle. And I was like, oh, Seattle, that's so far away. So I was a bit nervous about moving out here and stuff. But after that talk, I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And then I just had to gradually like. I kept it a secret from my parents for a little bit just because I was worried that they would think I was just moving out here just for a relationship and not for my acting and stuff like that, which wasn't true at all. I was just like, oh, I need to just... I felt like it was easier if, like, being in South Bend, I felt like it was easier. If I moved to Chicago, it's easy to be like, well, this city's too big. I'll just pack it up and go home and give up acting and, you know, or go to Toronto and I'm stuck in Canada. You know, it's like, oh, not that Canada's not great, but, you know, then I'd be stuck there. And it's like, well, crap, it's way too expensive here. It's a whole other country. You know, it's definitely not for me. Someday I will take second city classes. They have them online. I just have to find a good time for my schedule. But anyway, back to point, not rambling at all. So anyway, I moved out here and stuff like that back in 2008 after a long drive from Indiana. My parents drove with me as far as Minnesota, and then we said kind of our goodbyes, and then I was on my way from Minnesota all the way up to Washington. And when I got here and all that, I had done, before I moved out here, I'd done stand-up for a couple of years in Indiana, thanks to a workshop that they had there, which was wonderful. It was taught by a very talented and funny guy named John Osborne. And a lot of those guys, shout outs to those guys if they're watching. Jack Hole, John Osborne, Paul Lau, Miho, all the good gang. If I missed your name, don't think I didn't remember you. I just didn't think about it at the time. Anyway, but yeah, so they taught me a lot about writing jokes and stuff like that, and then just, getting comfortable on stage, especially because, I'd done a lot of theater, and a little bit of improv and sketch comedy in Indiana before that, but I had never done stand-up, where it's like, you are by yourself up there, and you have to try to entertain this audience, and, which can be tricky sometimes. And I had some good experiences and some bad experiences in stand-up. That's a story for another day, though. I'll talk about that another time. And so I moved out here. I obviously did do a little bit of stand-up out here for a little bit. But I knew my goal was that I wanted to take improv classes, because while I had done improv a little bit with my sketch and improv group that I was a part of in Indiana after I graduated from IU, I knew that I wanted to delve more into, I'm like, I want to just get a little more seasoned, just so I can, learn a little bit. Because I had really not learned too much of the actual rules of improv. I just played improv games. So it was more like, learning those kind of tricks of the trade of like yes and all that stuff. So anyway, long story short, too late, Clue reference. Basically, I moved out here, and after I did a couple stand-up things, did a guest set in Tacoma, and then I did this. Then I signed up for Jet City improv classes, and I took their 101 class. I met a lot of really cool people there. We all bonded pretty well, I'd say, and it was a lot of fun, actually. And it taught me to kind of like, it got me a little more comfortable too, I think, on stage. And so that was, because I hadn't actually been on stage acting, due to another story for another day. We'll talk about that another time too. But I hadn't been on acting stage for a while. I did eventually get back on stage and act again. But so I was like, okay, I was anxious. I'm like, let's take some improv classes. I figured I'd take a couple improv classes, and then I would start a group, or I would join Jet City or something like that. I wasn't sure exactly where my path was going yet, but I knew I had ideas. I knew I wanted to do more sketch comedy too, which sadly there wasn't really a whole lot of sketch comedy in terms of classes out here. I think they're like Unexpected Productions has one now, but at the time there really wasn't. And Sketchfest itself hadn't become as big as it is now. And like I didn't even, like I knew of it, but I hadn't really, I'm like, I was, when I started the group, I wasn't ready. I'm like, we're not ready for that. Anyway, like I said, I did a couple improv classes, and then in between 101 and 201, I unfortunately tried to get into 201, but they got overfilled, and I wasn't able to do it. So the group that I was with in 101 kind of got broken apart from me. So I was like, no, these are my first friends in Washington, besides my girlfriend, now wife. And so I was like, but they still kept in touch, and we would still hang out here and there. And we went to the duos night at Unexpected Productions. That was fun. And we had a nice joke of like, oh, this person's going to miss that class, so you can just pretend to be them that day. It was funny. Shout out to all those people in that one-on-one class. Those of you who I'm still in touch with, and those of you who I'm not. It was a good time, and it was a great welcoming for me in Washington. So thank you for that. So anyway, as the time went on, I took the 201 class at Doug Willott, which was awesome. Truly one of my improv mentors. And I also took a workshop with him, which was a lot of fun as well. And then I eventually did take 301 as well. Unfortunately, during this time, I had some financial problems, which was something that became a problem for a few years. So there was issues there with starting. But once I got through 301, I was just like, okay. I knew that I had auditioned for one of their long form classes, but it was right after the 101 class. I wasn't ready. Wasn't ready for it yet. So I auditioned just to audition. I think I auditioned for one of their other shows, but it was more like I was just going to audition. It was more just one of the experience. And there was a lot of people there, very talented people there. So I didn't really mind not getting in. It was like, it would have been cool too, but I was like, I'm just, just want the experience right now, just to be like, say I auditioned for them. But after that, I was like, I'd also heard that basically and I don't know if it's still true, because it's been a long time since I did any auditions for them, but that they don't a lot of times like to hire someone on their first audition, unless you just absolutely blow them away, I guess. But like they like to see people a couple of times come out to auditions before they add them and stuff like that. That's what I'd heard from some people. I don't know if that's true or not. So anyway, but after I heard that, I was like, well, maybe I should just start my own group, and then if opportunity comes along sometime, because I knew I wanted to do improv, but I was still kind of learning. Even when I started the group, I think I was still like looking up other games that we hadn't played in class and trying to keep track of all the rules and stuff like that. Which let me tell you, after you're outside of a class atmosphere, it can be very hard to do sometimes. You'll like be on stage and you're like, oh right, I was supposed to remember this and this and this. But then luckily, usually are able to just rebound back and not fall into bad habits and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah. So long story short, I did it again. So that was about 2009 at that point. So I'd been in Washington for about a year. And outside of some, like I said, financial issues, that's another story for another day too. I had started Turbo Turkey with a couple of people, 2 people that were in my 301 class, and it was a lot of fun. We met at Stone Soup Theater, which they just do. My wife actually works there now, but as a teaching artist. But they just do like outreach teaching programs now. That back then they had a like theater that you could rent and stuff like that. So we went into one of the black boxes and we would meet there, every week. I think it was a Wednesday, I think is when we would meet usually. And then we were just going to do our first short form show in August. And I can remember like when I was putting the group together too, there was a bunch of people in 301 and some very talented women too that were in that class that I really wanted to be in the group, but like for various reasons or other, either they just weren't quite ready to be a part of a regular group or they had already joined another group. And I can remember being somewhat like, I didn't react well to it, and it was just kind of like, no, but you should join my group, they had joined another group, and it was just kind of like, and I could have reacted better to it, just maturity, because I think what I had is when I left Indiana, I had like a bunch of friends there, and then through comedy and other stuff, and from high school and college and all that stuff, but like when I moved out here, it's like I just had Anna, so it was just like I have no friends yet. So that was another reason for Turbo Turkey. I'm like, I need friends. So anyway, I had a couple guys, John Culver and Paul Navarro, who were part of the group, and then another guy who came like the second or third week, Norm Bellis, who joined the group. And the 4 of us, like I said, we put our first show on in 2009. I should probably flash back to how did Turbo Turkey come about? Well, I started working at a company called Kids Love Soccer, which I found off of Craigslist back when that was, a viable thing to find it off of. Now it's just all porn. Do you want to be in a porno? Go to Craigslist. But yeah, so I ended up, the way the name came about was been trying to think of it, and like I had written down a whole bunch of different names, possibilities, but nothing was really like clicking to me in my head like, yes, this is the name. It's like I remember I had something like crow something, like I wanted some kind of bird thing, I don't know why. It was just like, we are the crow or something, I don't know. But like the way we're talking about is I was coaching a class and we had a game called Pluck the Turkey where we put a bunch of like shirts in our pants basically, and then they chase us around and grab our feathers off, and I said, try to catch us, we're some turbo turkeys. And from that day, I was like, hey, that's a fun name, Turbo Turkey. So that's kind of how Turbo Turkey came about in 2009, was that I was on a soccer field having kids grab things out of my pants, which sounds really bad, but it's really, it's cute and sweet. It's nothing gross about it, so don't get all freaked out now. It's literally a game. It is literally a game, Pluck the Turkey. Look it up, people. Go to Kids Love Soccer and you'll see it. Shout out Kids Love Soccer, who has been a great employee to me for many, many years. That was cool. And so our first show was in August to 3 people. Another learning experience, how to advertise. And I can remember being kind of upset that it was only 3 people because my wife was in a play at the time, so she couldn't make it to the show. She did come to one of our last rehearsals and gave a couple notes, which was cool. But like I remember, like it was just the one guy's, John's friends. They had a good time. We actually sat there and like during intermission just drank beer at intermission, and then we just did the rest of the show. Not drunk, but we were, I can remember one point of the show, I used to have a video of it, but like we're in the middle of a scene and then Norm just breaks the scene. It's just like, oh, there's my flashlight. It's like, what the dude? We're in the scene. Many Norm Bellis stories to tell, I'm sure. Great guy. But it was just funny because I was just like, I'm just gonna stop the scene in the middle of the thing and grab my flashlight. That's randomly here for some reason. But it was, on looking back, it was a fun show. They had a good time, and even John pointed out, he says, hey, the people that came had a good time. What else matters? And that's a hard lesson to learn because, when you're first starting your group or a show, and what we used to do in the Essential Stupidity days in Indiana was that we used to joke like, what if we sell out? And I think that mindset stays with you because you're like, what if we sell out? All these people will be here. We're a new group, and we're going to take them by storm. And then you get 3 people in the audience, and you're just like, oh, that didn't work. So anyway, yeah, that is kind of the first show of Turbo Turkey, which was August 2009. Right after that, I actually got into a play, so Psycho Beach Party. So that was fun, too. I could talk about that another time, because we're focusing on Turbo Turkey right now, not just Adam Haig acting world. We'll talk about that another time. We'll just go through the plays I've been in another time on the Adam vlog, or whatever it is. Whatever you want to call it. I don't know. I'm rambling. It's only been 16 minutes, guys. Do you want to hear more of the story? Please subscribe. So anyway, I'm rambling. So back to business. As time went on, I was like, okay, the Stone Soup was getting a little expensive. I was having some financial problems, as I mentioned. And it was pretty bad, admittedly, to a point where I'm sitting there like, I need to pay $159 to the Stone Soup. But I also have car insurance payments. So logically, you would think, pay that car insurance payment, Adam, because that's the smart thing to do. No one said I paid the $159 to the Stone Soup, because, hey, we needed a space to rehearse. So anyway, I learned from that lesson, and I will never do stupid things like that again. But anyway, that was cool. Not the whole, not having insurance thing, because that would be something that would haunt me for a few years. But that's a story for another day. So anyway, yeah, that was the first basic show of Turbo Turkey. From then on, we were just kind of like, I was like, okay, Stone Soup's too expensive. Obviously, my financial thing is a little shaky right now. So I didn't want to have to go somewhere where I'm going to have to pay $159 a week or whatever it was. I think that's what it was, to rent a space out. So, I had talked to actually somebody at a gay bar. I can't remember what the gay bar was, but I just remember they seemed to be open to it, but nothing really kind of came of it. To like do a show there or do rehearsals there or something like that. And so instead I ended up I go to a place called, I think it was the Capitol Club. I think that's what it was called. It's in Cap Hill. It's a restaurant. Not too bad of food, but they had like a room, and I remember the rule was you could use the room for anything you wanted to as long as you spent $100 in food. So what happened was, as we were building up to this, Paul sadly had to leave the group. He had been going through some things, personal things, nothing bad or anything like that. He needed to kind of focus on some other things and job things and things like that, which was sad. We're still friends to this day. Great guy. And I appreciate that he helped me start the group and all that and contributed and stuff like that to the rentals and stuff like that. And John was kind of on the fence too. I think he stuck around just for a little bit, just because he had other things on his plate too. Norm, unfortunately, hurt his back doing, I think it was IATSE work or something like that, but he had fallen and broken his back and stuff, so he was on the shelf, so then it's just like, well, I guess I'm doing this stuff by myself. So what I did is this time, what I didn't do before is I tried to post something, but apparently I hadn't posted on Craigslist when I was trying to look for people at the beginning. So I thought, I'm going to do a Craigslist ad. Once again, back when it was a viable option and not just porn. So I did a Craigslist ad, and I got a huge amount of responses, which was pretty cool. And I was like, oh, wow, all these people are interested in joining this group. Cool. And so we met at the Capitol Club, and and I met several of them. And so that was cool. The big problem with the Capitol Club, though, was that whole $100 in foods. I should mention at that time, right before the first rehearsal, my car got repossessed. call back to that insurance that I didn't pay. Um, Apparently, the car payments that I was making to a bank in Indiana was, it's a whole long story there, but basically they added insurance, so the payments that I was making weren't enough to pay for the payment, and so they repossessed my car. So then I had to end up taking a bus to Seattle and a cab home and all this stuff for the rehearsal, which was really sucky. But then it's like, can you also spend $100 in food at this place? And granted, it was $100 altogether. So, but at the same time, looking back, it's like, I can't believe I had these brand new people to this group. Hey guys, it's cool if you're in the group, but you're gonna have to spend $100, and we're gonna have to spend $100 on food. So if you could all just get some food or drinks or whatever, and every single week that we meet, I'm sure you won't be spending out your wallet at all. Like I said, these are a lot of lessons learned as we go through time. So I'm probably just going to wrap this up at 30 minutes. I think half hour is good enough for story time number one. So yeah, this time it's 2010. So we had, by this point we had, John had left. He came to a couple rehearsals, but he just said he honestly was just, that was tough for me. I didn't react the best way either to it, because once again, he was another one of my first friends in Washington. And I'd gone to a party of his and all that stuff at his house, and that was cool, and we had a good time and played beer pong together and all this other stuff. But he had obviously good reasons for leaving, and it was more just, this was more just something fun to do, but wasn't something he was like the rest of us. I was an actor, I had done all this, so it was more something he enjoyed doing, but it wasn't something that his heart was totally into. So looking back on it, it's like totally understandable. And since people have gone through Turbo Turkey and things like that over the years, I've kind of come to be more understanding about that type of stuff. Whereas before, it's like, what? How can you leave me? And yeah, I'm an emotional guy. What can I say? So anyway, yeah. So he left, but we had Lexi, we had Jennifer, we had Josh, who's still with the group to this day, Simon. And then we had a couple more. We did auditions a couple more weeks after that, where we got Sophia and Annie, who joined as well. And I'll tell another story about another real quick. And then we eventually got we ended up having 10 people in the group, or 10 or 11 people, pretty quickly. But I think what happened really was there was this one rehearsal that we went. There was a girl named Tina Marie that was with the group for just a few weeks too. And to be fair, she was going through some stuff, I think, too. And but I can remember she decided to have a rehearsal at her house one time, and I'm like, oh, cool, we don't have to spend $100 on food, cool. And so I was like, cool, we went to her house, and we still had a few drinks here and there, I think some potential legalized drugs were at that rehearsal too. I won't speak on that. But anyway, I just remember it was funny because she had apparently had a few, and had basically passed out on her couch, I guess. And that's not to soil her good name or anything. Best of luck to her, and I hope she did, stop doing that after that. But at the time, it was just kind of awkward because I remember me and Jennifer and Simon and Josh were all just like, well, she's passed out. Should we leave? And so instead, we just kept playing improv games for another hour or something before we left. So I'm just like, that's just a crazy, funny story to tell, but it was funny. It was funny. I'm glad that she, recognized that she had, needed to probably clean up her act and stuff like that. And she was a very nice person. She was eccentric, but she was very nice. I'm sad that she wasn't able to stick with the group, but I'm happy that she was able to, get clean and all that stuff and live a different type of life. But that was a funny story too, because it's like, well, should we leave or keep playing? And apparently she ended up, Lexi hadn't been in rehearsals yet, and this was the first time rehearsal, and apparently she called Lexi, who she had just met, asking if she knew where this random friend of hers were. It's like, I don't even know you! Why are you calling me? So that was kind of funny too. So I can remember like I said, we did auditions, we got a couple more people in. Josh brought his friend Ken, that was 8, and then Jennifer had a friend named David, and then Ken brought a girl named Kim. All very nice people and talented people, but the thing what my plan was to do some improv and some sketch. And I think I had more of a broader spectrum of what I wanted to do as a show, but not the knowledge or experience to be able to know, like, yeah, we should probably not do all of this. Or we shouldn't have 11 or 12 people and then have to keep adding roles to the sketches. And I remember I wrote a bunch of sketches. There was one that was like, I had a CSI Haddonfield one, which was, it was funny, but it was also very parody-esque. And it wasn't bad, but it was also just like, I have 10 people coming on the stage, and, you know, it wasn't, so it was just like learning from experience in that of now how I would know, like, oh, okay, we don't want to do that, we don't want to do that, you know. And also I regret, you know, having David and Kim join when they did, because it was so late in the process of where we were going with the shows. And I think the problem was we all got along really great. And we would also go out to this place called the Yanmar. And well, luckily Jennifer had pointed out before, flashback real quick, we had gone out to Yanmar to do some karaoke, and after rehearsal one time, me and her and Simon, and then she recommended this place called the Findy Center, and it's like $50 or something like that for a room, but you can get that room, and they're pretty nice classroom size rooms, and we rehearsed there instead of having to spend $100 on food at the Capitol Club, which was certainly wise. So we started meeting there and stuff like that, and had people chip in and stuff like that as they could, and everybody seemed pretty willing as they could. But yeah, I regret that they came in, just because they were very nice people and talented people, but they were thrown in there, and it wasn't fair to them to be thrown so late in the process. And to be fair, our rehearsals were disorganized, and I was so happy to have this group of friends. And, you know, we'd all look forward to going to Yanmar afterwards and do karaoke and drink and all that stuff. But the problem was that, you know, sometimes rehearsals would start late, and or Josh and Ken would be late, or other people would be late, and it'd just be like, well, we got through about one sketch, all right. You know, and it's like, we have a sketch coming up, and we ended up doing it at the Jewel Box, at the Rendezvous, where we've done shows now, too. But, and it was the first time we'd done that thing there, but, like, so our deal was that we could do one Saturday show, and then the other show would be on a weeknight, and that was just kind of, because we were a new group, and we hadn't really proven ourselves yet, so we could draw a little bit of an audience. But yeah, I had all these sketches, and we finally got to a point where, and to her credit, Annie was smart enough to be like, hey, I think we need to, like, narrow down which ones we're going to use, because these are all great sketches, I like them, but we've got too much. And so we didn't do the CSI Haddonfield. We ended up cutting several sketches. We kept some that were, you know, pretty good. But even to the standards of writing that I do today, I would consider them kind of, my sketches at least were kind of mediocre compared to, like, now I feel like more comfortable with my writing, but I think then I was still kind of figuring it out and figuring out my voice and all that type of stuff, and not just parroting, you know, I'm going to parody this TV show and movie. Which, you know, kind of works, you know, a little bit on the early days of YouTube, but now it's kind of just like, you just do that on SNL. But yeah, so I remember our second technical show was on a Saturday, and I remember, was it either a Friday or Saturday? I just remember being almost late because I didn't have a debit card yet, and so I only could pay cash, and I couldn't find a parking space on the street, and I had to pay. And so then it wasn't taking my $10 bill, and it was just a pain in the ass. But yeah, I got there, and, you know, we actually had a pretty good show. It was a pretty good turnout. We ended up breaking even, and we went out and did karaoke afterwards and stuff like that. But I can remember, like, watching the video of the show with a friend of mine, and outside of one or two sketches, like, he barely laughed at all. And I'm just like, well, this is awkward. Because, you know, sometimes you do a show, and you're thinking, man, that show went great. And you have the energy, you're on stage, it's live, and you're doing it. And then you watch it back, and you're like, they don't seem to be laughing very much. And then it kind of just crushes your soul and spirit. It's like, well, I suck. But yeah, then as time went on, the show was over. Now, unfortunately, the second show that we did wasn't quite as good, and unfortunately, we also had Sophia bow out, and then we had Kim and David both bowed out before the second show, So, which I felt bad. There's no hard feelings there. I had no problem with them whatsoever. I understood it. It was to be fair a disorganized mess. It was a fun mess, but it was a disorganized mess. Fully admit that. Um, but the second show, there was just it just felt like really low energy, and then I remember we had to we started to pay for the room, and we didn't do as many people because it was a weeknight. Who's coming out on a weeknight that much? But I can remember we had to pay for the room, and like we were a little bit short, and a couple of the members had already left, and then it was like, and my wife ended up chipping in to help pay for the room, and I was kind of a little bit steamed about that because it's like, come on, guys, it's like my wife is not a part of this group. I mean, she is now, but like at that time she wasn't. She was just an audience member supporting the show, and I remember Norm came to the show too, and it was the first time I'd seen him since his back surgery and all that. But like it was just yeah, it was upsetting, and I was just so I should have just slept on it, but like I went through and sent an email and said I felt like it was kind of ridiculous that my girlfriend had to pay for the you know help chip into the room. We had all been trying to chip in, and there had been several times that I had to foot the bill um, for the Finney Center too, and it was just kind of like, oh, an earthquake. I'm playing. And so that was, frustrating. And I can remember I wrote an email and stuff like that just about how that was ridiculous. And then Annie basically said, well, I chipped in here and there. And it's like, well, did you though? I remember chipping in one time, and that was, but that's a whole nother story. I mean, there was a bit of a falling out there with Annie and me, and which I regret. I wish it hadn't happened because I genuinely liked her. But what happened was there was a situation with, she was doing a play with Josh and Ken, and then things kind of got just a long story of how the show got cut down, and she was really upset about it, and so it made it very tense with them still in the Turbo Turkey group because that was a separate project they were doing, and that's what I tried to explain to her. It's a separate project, just like let that go, As I've been bad about holding grudges myself, but like it's like let that go. You just got it. That's a separate organization, but she kept having hard feelings, and it was really awkward with her and Josh and Ken, and it was just like ugh. And so she's like, oh, I'm dipping out. And I'm like, okay, So it was like, it was upsetting, but like, I understood it. Unfortunately, also at this time, I was going through stuff. I had lost my job, and then, especially happened earlier in the year with the car situation, and then my other job demoted me, and it was just a whole thing. So that was frustrating financially, and then, unfortunately, all this group of people that I made, Ken and Lexi were both going off to college. Josh got into a financial situation, so he went with Ken. So it was 3 people I'd lost. Andy left. And then so it was basically just down to me and Jennifer and Simon, I think. And then it was like, and then I was just like, well, I'll just do a Craigslist ad again and we'll get some more people. But unfortunately, outside of one person, we really didn't get the turnout of people that I would have liked. There was one guy who came that was a sketch writer. He came to one rehearsal and was giving me a few notes about things, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. We should write some sketches. And he never showed up again. There was this other guy who was like a professor, very nice guy, but like really didn't have any kind of experience with acting or improv or anything like that. And he came to a couple of rehearsals, and then he stopped showing up, and then this other guy was kind of funny, but when he showed up once or twice, never showed up again. This other girl who had joined the group had brought her friend and her sister, and her sister brought her baby, which was kind of, it was like, okay, well, it is what it is. But it was just kind of random, like, it was a random baby at rehearsal. And I remember Jennifer had only been able to make it to 1 or 2 rehearsals, and then Simon was only able to pop in here and there, but like, so I was feeling kind of frustrated because I was like, and then Jennifer was already like, thinking I don't know how gung-ho I am about it right now, and I'm like, oh boy. But yeah, and so after a bit or whatever, outside of the one girl, Stephanie, they all kind of dipped out too, and I was just like, okay, I knew I needed to just take the time to restructure things. And so that's already 35 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop here. So this is part 1 of Turbo Turkey. You've gotten to know a little bit about some of the members. Now I can easily write a freaking novel about all this stuff, but I'm just trying to give you basic bullet points of things and stories and stuff like that. And so this whole series of things I'll do here is more just kind of my side of things, how I grew and learned from these circumstances and stuff like that. And just to tell you a little bit about Turbo Turkey, and how we've grown and learned from bad experiences. So yeah, that was so we're stopping here at 2010. So we have many more years to go, lovelies. So yeah, cool. Thank you for watching, guys, and hit that subscribe button and tune in next week, and we'll do some more Turbo Turkey talk. Have a good day.